If your HDB is reaching MOP this year, you may be standing at one of the biggest financial crossroads of your life. So for the first time in almost 7 years, HDB resale prices have recorded a slight decline. And at the same time, approximately 13,480 HDB flats are expected to reach their MOP in 2026. That's almost double the number we saw in 2025, where only about 7,000 units reached MOP. Resale transaction volumes are slowing, more BTO supplies entering the market, and buyers suddenly have more choices than before. So naturally, many homeowners are starting to ask the same question. Should I sell my HDB before everyone else does? Should I continue holding, or should I finally take the next step and upgrade? Now, whenever someone asks me whether they should sell their HDB after MOP, I actually think they're asking the wrong question, because the better question is this: so what role do you want your property to play in your future? Because the answer is that question could potentially impact your retirement, your net worth, and your family's long-term financial position. For many Singaporeans, their HDB flat is more than just a home. It's often the first major asset they ever own. It's where families are raised, memories are built, and financial foundations are established. In fact, many homeowners often refer to their HDB as their first pot of gold. And honestly, that's not entirely wrong. Many BTO buyers enter the market at subsidized prices. They watch their neighborhood mature over the years and eventually see significant value appreciation by the time their flat reaches MOP. But here's something I think many homeowners don't spend enough time thinking about. The profit itself doesn't change your life. What you do with that profit potentially can. Because MOP isn't simply about unlocking your ability to sell, it's about unlocking your ability to choose. And sometimes the choices you make after MOP can have a significant impact on where you eventually end up financially. Before we talk about whether you should sell, hold, or upgrade, I think it's important to understand something many homeowners overlook. Every HDB flat goes through a life cycle. Let's take a typical BTO buyer as an example. So when you first purchase a BTO, you are usually entering at one of the lowest pricing points available because you are buying directly from HDB at a subsidized price. During the construction phase, the surrounding neighborhood gradually starts taking shape. New amenities are introduced, transport infrastructure improves, coffee shops begin operating, supermarkets open, and neighborhood conveniences become established. At the same time, newer BTO launches continue entering the market at gradually higher prices due to rising land costs, construction costs, and replacement costs. This is why many Singaporeans often refer to their HDB as their first pot of gold. Now let's fast forward to the MOP stage. In my opinion, this is often when a HDB flat is at one of the strongest points of its entire life cycle. So think about it. It is the newest resale flat available within the estate. The lease is still almost brand new. The condition is generally excellent. Minimal renovation may be required. Buyers can move in immediately without waiting years for construction. And unlike buying a BTO, purchasers get certainty and immediate occupancy. So by the time MOP arrives, right, the estate has also matured. The food courts are already operating, supermarkets are already open, transport links are also already functioning. The schools, neighborhood shops, and amenities are also established. And frankly speaking, who doesn't like the newest thing available in the resale market? This is one of the reasons why newly MOP flats often command strong demand and premium pricing. However, this is also where many homeowners stop thinking, because the life cycle doesn't stop at MOP. As years pass, newer BTO projects begin reaching MOP. So more resale prices enter the market, more competition starts appearing. The once newest flat is no longer the newest options available. And renovation requirements also gradually increase, wear and tear becomes more apparent, and also the lease continues running down. So now this doesn't mean prices suddenly collapse, but what it does mean is that the dynamics gradually begin changing, and that is why many homeowners choose to evaluate their options around the MOP stage. Not because they must sell, but because they recognize that their flat may be at one of the strongest point of its life stage and the life cycle from an asset progression perspective. So because while HDB is still an excellent stepping stone, it was never designed primarily as a wealth creation tool. It was designed to provide affordable housing. The wealth building opportunity often comes from what you choose to do next. Now let's talk about what's happening in today's market. In 2026, approximately 13,480 HDB flats are expected to reach MOP. So compared to 2025, where only about 7,000 flats reached MOP, that's almost double the number entering the market within just 1 year. Now think about what this means. Every MOP flat creates options for home buyers, and some will continue staying, some will rent out rooms, some will sell and upgrade. So naturally, a portion of these owners will choose to sell, and when more owners choose to sell, more resale supply enters the market. For the past few years, many buyers are competing over a relatively limited number of newer resale flats. Moving forward, buyers will have significantly more choices, and when buyers have more choices, sellers naturally face greater competition. And at the same time, we are also seeing increased BTO supply entering the the market. To address housing demand, the government has introduced additional BTO projects, including around 4,000 shorter waiting time flats with waiting periods of less than 3 years. Why is this important? Because every new key collection today eventually becomes future MOP supply 5 years later. In other words, the supply pipeline isn't disappearing anytime soon. The flow of newer flats entering the market is expected to remain healthy over the coming years. Then at the same time, right, approximately 26,000 HDB resale transactions were recorded in 2025, making it one of the lowest resale transaction volumes since the 2019 to 2020 period. So this suggests that while prices remain relatively resilient, buyers' activity have already started showing signs of moderation, and we are beginning to see that reflected in pricing. In 2025, HDB resale prices recorded growth of approximately 2.9%, marking the slowest annual growth since the post-COVID recovery period began. And in Q1 2026, the HDB resale price index recorded a slight decline of 0.1%, marking the first quarterly decline in 7 years. Now let me be clear, I'm not saying that HDB prices are going to crash. It's far from it, but what I'm saying is that the extraordinary sellers market we have enjoyed over the last few years may be normalizing, and home buyers should at least pay attention to that. Now wherever I meet homeowners whose flats have just reached MOP, they often ask me one question: should I sell? And I usually respond with another question: what are you trying to achieve over the next 10 to 20 years? Because that answer changes everything. If your objective is simply to continue enjoying your current home, staying put may be perfectly reasonable. If your children are studying nearby, your parents live close by, and your mortgage remains affordable, there may be absolutely no reason to move. But if your objective is long-term wealth accumulation, retirement planning, and growing your net worth, then maybe the conversation becomes very different. Because now we are no longer discussing housing, we are discussing asset progression. Now let's talk about something I think many homeowners underestimate: opportunity cost. Because when people think about upgrading, they usually focus on what they have to pay. Very few people focus on what they may be giving up by waiting. If we compare HDB resale prices against condominium resale prices between 2015 and 2025, we can see that while HDB prices enjoyed a strong recovery during the COVID years, private residential property gradually delivered stronger long-term appreciation. This is where the concept of asset progression becomes important. So let's assume two homeowners starting at similar points. One continues holding an HDB asset, the other eventually upgrade into a private property. So over time, the homeowner with a larger asset base may potentially experience a very different financial outcome. So based on the data we analyze, the opportunity cost between a HDB and a private resale appreciation work out to approximately 308 per square feet over the 10-year period. Now let's make that tangible. For a 1,000 square feet home, that's approximately $308,000 in difference. And that's before considering any future compounding effects. This is why many homeowners don't see upgrading as a lifestyle decision. They see it as part of the long-term savings and wealth building strategy. And I think that's an important distinction, because the purpose of upgrading isn't necessarily to get a swimming pool, it isn't necessary to get a gym, and it certainly isn't about status. The bigger objective is creating a larger asset base that may potentially support your future financial goals. And then some people might feel like property prices are already so high. Now this is probably one of the most common objections we hear today. People look at the current condominium prices and say property prices are already so high. And honestly, that's exactly what many people said in 2020, and is what many people said in 2021. It's what many people said in almost every property cycle. Wherever prices reach new highs, people naturally feel uncomfortable. But here's also a question you may like to think about. Did the people who profited from the last cycle buy when prices felt cheap, or did they buy at were considered record prices at that point in time? If you look back at the condominium transactions from 2020 and 2021, many buyers genuinely believed they were buying at peak prices. Many thought they had missed the opportunity, and also many thought the market had become too expensive. Yet those same buyers are often the ones sitting on significant gains today. And the reality is that every cycle feels expensive when you are living through it, and every cycle looks cheap when viewed in hindsight. So markets move in cycles, sentiments repeats itself, human behavior also repeats itself, and one of the biggest lessons investors learn is that waiting for the perfect time often means missing valuable years in the market. Now let's bring this back to what truly matters: retirement. Let's assume a couple retires at age 60 and lives until age 85. That's 25 years of retirement. If they require approximately $6,000 per month to support their daily expenses, that's roughly $72,000 per year. This is assuming both couples spend about $100 each daily, including daily food and necessities. So over 25 years, that's approximately $1.8 million. And that's before accounting for medical expenses, travel, inflation, helping children, or supporting elderly parents, or simply enjoying a comfortable lifestyle. This is why I believe every homeowner should ask themselves one simple question: is my property mainly a place to stay, or is it also part of my retirement strategy? Because for many Singaporeans, property eventually becomes one of their largest retirement assets. So should you sell your HDB once it reaches MOP? Not necessarily, and I certainly don't believe every homeowner should rush out and sell simply because market conditions are changing. But we do believe every homeowner should take the time to review their options, because MOP is not simply about unlocking your ability to sell, it's about unlocking your ability to choose what are the available options next for you. And for some homeowners, right, staying put may absolutely be the right decision. And for others, upgrading may become one of the most important wealth building decisions they make over the next 20 years. And that's why I often say this: your HDB may be your first pot of gold, but it was never meant to be your final pot of gold. Because ultimately, upgrading to a condominium isn't just about lifestyle. It may very well be one of the most effective savings plans for your future retirement. If your HDB is approaching MOP and you like to understand what options may be available to you, feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to walk through your numbers, your goals, and your plans so you can make a decision with clarity and confidence. And if you find this video useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with somebody whose HDB is approaching MOP. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.